The Lessons of History by Will and Ariel Durant. Picture this. You wake up one morning with the ability to live for 5,000 years, not just shuffling through the centuries in a fog, but fully awake, watching empires explode into existence and then crumble like sandcastles at high tide. You'd see passionate movements that once moved millions become nothing more than dusty footnotes. You'd witness human nature twist and turn through the ages, or maybe, just maybe, stay exactly the same. What wisdom would you gather? Standing on that impossible mountain of time, gazing down at humanity's long, messy, gorgeous, and violent journey, what threads would you notice, weaving through it all? Would it look like complete chaos, just wars stacked on inventions stacked on forgotten names? Or would you start to hear a rhythm, like civilization itself has a pulse? For more than 50 years, an extraordinary couple named Will and Ariel Durant devoted their entire existence to answering exactly that question. They launched one of the most audacious intellectual adventures ever attempted, writing a complete history of human civilization. The result? A massive 11-volume series called The Story of Civilization, thousands upon thousands of pages covering everything from ancient empires to Napoleon's era. They won the Pulitzer Prize, not just for the sheer ambition, but for the profound humanity pulsing through every page. After completing this monumental work, they faced one final crucial question: what does it all actually mean? What are the essential truths that echo across the centuries? So they distilled their entire life's work into a single, slim book of just over 100 pages, called The Lessons of History. This isn't a dry collection of dates and dead people's names. Think of it as a treasure map. It reveals the hidden forces shaping our world, the deep currents flowing beneath our daily headlines and personal dramas. By the time we finish this journey together, you'll look at the news, at conflicts between nations, at debates tearing through our society, even at your own life, not as random chaos, but as part of a predictable, repeating rhythm. You'll understand the invisible rules governing civilization, and you'll gain a perspective that's both humbling and incredibly empowering. This isn't just a book summary, it's your invitation into a deeper understanding of the human story. To grasp the lessons of history, the Durants first ask us to zoom way out. So far out that our entire planet becomes a tiny, fragile marble floating in the cold, silent vastness of space. Our whole human story, with all its drama and noise, is just a brief flash in cosmic time. The first lesson of history? Humility. We're guests on this planet, and the planet itself answers to forces far beyond our control. Geology sets the stage for our drama. Rivers like the Nile and Euphrates birth civilizations, while deserts and jungles swallow them whole. Geography is the mother of history, both nurturing and disciplining us. But if Earth is the stage, what are the rules of the performance? The Durants argue that history's most fundamental laws aren't written by presidents or kings, but by biology. History is just a tiny fragment of biology. Human life is just a small part of all life on this planet. And the laws of biology? Simple and brutal. The first biological lesson: life is competition. We love to think of ourselves as evolved and sophisticated, but deep down, we're driven by the same raw impulses that have governed life for millions of years. Competition isn't just part of trade. It is the trade of life. It stays peaceful when resources are plentiful, and turns violent when mouths outnumber meals. The Durants write with sharp wit. Civilized men consume one another by due process of law. Even our cooperation is just a tool for better competition. We form groups, families, communities, nations, to strengthen ourselves against other groups. Our nations are basically ourselves multiplied, complete with our greed, our aggression, and our pride, just on a massive scale. War? That's simply a nation's way of eating. The second biological lesson: life is selection. Nature, the authors remind us with a wry smile, hasn't read the American Declaration of Independence. It doesn't believe all people are created equal. In fact, nature loves inequality, because difference is the raw material for evolution. We're all born unfree and unequal, shaped by our genes and the circumstances we're born into. Some arrive with stronger bodies, sharper minds, or tougher spirits. This inequality isn't a bug in the system, it is the system. And civilization, with all its complexity, actually magnifies this natural inequality. The strong get stronger, while the weak fall further behind. The Durants deliver a stark truth: freedom and equality are mortal enemies. When one thrives, the other withers. Give people freedom, and their natural inequalities multiply. Want to enforce equality? You'll have to sacrifice freedom. This fundamental tension runs through every political and economic debate in history. Utopias promising perfect equality? Biologically doomed. The best we can hope for is rough equality, injustice, and opportunity. The third biological lesson might be the most sobering. Life must breed. Nature has a passion for quantity as the path to quality. She loves large litters. She cares more about species survival than individual comfort. This leads to a recurring historical pattern. Nations with low birth rates periodically get challenged, and often overtaken by more fertile groups. They point to ancient Rome, where upper classes limited family size while immigrant populations from the north and east refilled the empire, completely changing its ethnic and cultural makeup. They suggest, almost prophetically, that the same dynamic plays out in our modern world. Birth rates, like wars, can determine the fate of religions and empires. As they put it with dark humor, there is no humorist like history. So we have a competitive, unequal species, driven to multiply, living on a challenging planet. That's the raw material of history. But what about the things we build? Our cultures, our morals, our governments. Let's tackle race first. The Durants dive straight into this, examining theories from writers like Gobineau, who claimed civilization was created by a superior Aryan race. They trace how this idea narrowed to Teutons, then Nordics, eventually becoming the toxic ideology fueling World War II. After laying out these theories, the Durants demolished them with the sheer weight of historical evidence. A Chinese scholar would point to the most enduring civilization in history, created by his people. A Mexican scholar would highlight the magnificent Mayan and Aztec cultures. A Hindu scholar would speak of the great Dravidic builders in southern India. History is colorblind, they conclude. It can develop civilization under almost any skin. The truth? It's not race that makes civilization. It's civilization that makes the people. Circumstances, geographical, economic, political, create a culture, and that culture shapes a human type. Civilization is a team effort, and nearly all peoples have contributed. What about our character? Has human nature itself changed over these thousands of years? The Durants answer with a resounding no. The Greeks in Plato's time behaved remarkably like modern people. The Romans acted like the English. Our tools and technologies transform dramatically, but our motives and goals stay the same. Acquire resources, find love, engage in conflict, seek community, raise families. The poor have the same impulses as the rich, just fewer opportunities to act on them. Nothing in history is clearer than this fact. Successful rebels, once in power, adopt the very methods they used to condemn. Evolution in recorded history has been social, not biological. It proceeds through new ideas and innovations, transmitted through imitation and education. This is where the great man enters the story. The hero, the genius, the innovator. They're not gods, but they're more than just products of their time. They're formative forces. An idea from a single mind, a decision by a single leader, can redirect history's course. But for every innovator, there's a vast majority of imitators. And for every radical proposing change, there's a conservative resisting it. This tension, this constant push and pull between old and new, is the creative engine of social development. The conservative resisting change is just as valuable as the radical proposing it. It's good that new ideas get challenged, tested by fire, before humanity accepts them. This brings us to one of the most fascinating parts, morals, Where do our ideas of right and wrong come from? The Durants propose that moral codes aren't divine revelations. They're practical rules that societies create to ensure survival and growth. And because of this, morals shift as economic conditions shift. They divide history into three great economic stages: hunting, agriculture, and industry. In the hunting stage, life was dangerous and uncertain. A man had to be ready to fight and kill. Greed was a virtue. When you caught your prey, you gorged yourself because your next meal was anyone's guess. Aggression, brutality, and sexual readiness were advantages in the survival struggle. Probably every vice was once a virtue, the Durants suggest. Our sins might be relics of our rise, not marks of our fall. Then came the agricultural revolution, and everything transformed. The new lifestyle demanded new virtues. Hard work became more important than bravery. Peace became more profitable than war. Thrift became more valuable than violence. The family became the central production unit. Fathers wielded absolute authority. Children were economic assets, so large families were encouraged, and birth control considered immoral. Female chastity was essential to avoid unprotected motherhood. This agricultural moral code, early marriage, strict monogamy, many children, was stern, but it produced some of history's strongest characters and dominated Western civilization for centuries. Then the Industrial Revolution swept it all away. Men, women, and children left family farms to work as individuals in factories. The economic foundation of the family crumbled. Marriage was delayed. Cities provided every stimulus for sex, but every discouragement for marriage. Women were emancipated, meaning industrialized, and contraceptives allowed them to separate sex from pregnancy. Parental authority, village surveillance, religious support, all began fading. The old agricultural moral code started dying, leaving us in moral limbo, caught between a code that no longer fits our lives and a new one yet to fully form. This moral loosening, they observe, often intensifies after wars. They draw direct parallels between periods after great ancient wars, like the Peloponnesian War in Greece, or civil wars in Rome, and the period after the world wars of the 20th century. In both cases, you see a generation losing its economic and moral footing, rising cynicism, and questioning of all old traditions. But history offers consolation here. Sin has flourished in every age. Every generation thinks it's the most wicked in history, but looking at the past shows this is rarely true. Historians record the exceptional. War, crime, and scandal are interesting because they deviate from the norm. Behind history's red facade were millions of orderly homes, devoted marriages, and quiet acts of kindness. Who will dare to write a history of human goodness, they ask. So what about religion, that great pillar of morality? The skeptical historian, they admit, develops humble respect for religion, because it appears indispensable in every land and age. It offers comfort to the suffering, discipline to the young, and meaning to the lowly. Napoleon famously said it keeps the poor from murdering the rich. Since life is inherently unequal, some supernatural hope may be the only alternative to despair. Heaven and utopia are buckets in a well, they write. When one goes down, the other goes up. When religion declines, radical ideologies often rise to fill the void. Religion began, they theorize, not with morality but with fear of nature's hidden forces. Only later did priests align these fears with local moral codes, telling people the laws were dictated by gods. This alliance between priests and rulers became one of history's most stable partnerships. Of course, the Church has been run by fallible humans. It stooped to fraud, promoted pious legends, and disgraced itself with the Inquisition. But it also worked to reduce slavery, soften brutal laws, and vastly expand charity. For centuries, it served as a moral superstate, holding Europe's kings to a single moral standard. That dream shattered under rising nationalism, skepticism, and science. Religious beliefs' decline in the West began slowly with Copernicus, who displaced humanity from the universe's center, and accelerated through the Enlightenment and Industrial Revolution. Life's mechanization suggested a godless world machine. Humanity's moral sense also evolved, making it difficult for educated people to accept traditional theology's vengeful God. In a real sense, Christ's ethics destroyed the Old Testament's God. So can a society maintain moral life without religion? History's answer isn't encouraging. There's no significant example of a society successfully doing so before our time. A few modern states have tried, but often a new secular faith, communism or patriotism, rushes in to fill the void, becoming a new opium of the people. The Durants leave us with a provocative thought. As long as there is poverty, there will be gods. Religion has many lives and a habit of resurrection. Periods of skepticism and paganism are often followed by reactions, religious revivals, as moral disorder generates longing for belief and discipline. Now we arrive at the engine driving so much change, economics. Karl Marx argued that history is simply economics in action. Political forms, religious institutions, cultural creations, all rooted in economic realities. The Durants agree this is a powerful lens. Greek allies, money built the Parthenon. The Medici banking house financed the Florentine Renaissance. The French Revolution happened not because of Voltaire's wit, but because the middle class had gained economic power and wanted matching political power. The authors trace power's flow from the person working the soil, to the warrior protecting him, to the banker financing them both. The men who can manage men, manage the men who can manage only things, and the men who can manage money manage all, they quote. This leads to the single most important economic lesson in the entire book. Because practical ability differs from person to person, the majority of abilities in any society is always concentrated in a minority of people. Wealth concentration is a natural result of this ability concentration. It happens in every society and every age. Despotism can slow it down. Democracy, by allowing the most liberty, accelerates it. In a progressive society, this wealth concentration can reach a critical point where the strength of the poor masses rivals the strength of the rich few. This unstable equilibrium is a recurring historical crisis. History has met this crisis two ways: through legislation that peacefully redistributes wealth, or through revolution that violently redistributes poverty. They offer two powerful ancient examples. In Athens around 594 BC, the gap between rich and poor had grown so extreme the city teetered on civil war's brink. But good sense prevailed. They elected a statesman named Solon, who devalued currency to ease debtors' burdens, canceled many debts, ended imprisonment for debt, and established a graduated income tax where the rich paid 12 times the poor's rate. The rich protested, radicals complained he didn't go far enough, but his peaceful reforms saved Athens from revolution. The Roman Senate chose a different path. When the Gracchus brothers proposed similar land reforms to help the poor, the Senate had them killed. The result? 100 years of brutal class and civil war that ultimately destroyed the Roman Republic. The lesson is crystal clear. Wealth concentration is natural and inevitable, periodically alleviated by either violent or peaceful redistribution. All economic history is the slow heartbeat of the social organism, a vast systole and diastole of concentrating wealth and compulsory recirculation. This rhythm is also the story of socialism versus capitalism. Socialism isn't a modern invention. The Durants show us socialist experiments in ancient Sumeria, in Ptolemaic Egypt where the state controlled nearly all commerce, in Diocletian's Rome, in ancient China under several emperors, and most remarkably in the Inca Empire of Peru, perhaps the longest-lasting socialist regime in history. In nearly every case, these experiments eventually failed, buckling under bloated bureaucracy, public corruption, and the simple fact that removing the profit motive kills people's incentive to work hard and innovate. The eternal choice seems to be between private plunder and public graft. But the story doesn't end there. In the modern world, we see a synthesis emerging. Fear of revolution has compelled capitalism to accept semi-socialist measures like welfare states and progressive taxation. And failure to generate wealth has compelled socialism to restore individualistic motives to spur production. As the Durants wisely note, the fear of capitalism has compelled socialism to widen freedom, and the fear of socialism has compelled capitalism to increase equality. This brings us to the government forms we use to manage these conflicts. Monarchy is the most natural and has been history's most prevalent government form. Democracies, by contrast, have been hectic and brief interludes. But monarchy, especially hereditary monarchy, is prone to stupidity and extravagance. Most governments, in reality, are oligarchies, ruled by a minority. A minority is simply easier to organize for action than a majority. So what about revolution? Does history justify it? The Durants are deeply skeptical. In most cases, results achieved by violent revolution would likely have come anyway through gradual economic development, without the bloodshed and chaos. To break sharply with the past is to court madness. A group's sanity, like an individual's, lies in the continuity of its traditions. Violent revolutions don't so much redistribute wealth as destroy it. The only real revolution is in the enlightenment of the mind and improvement of character. Democracy, they argue, is the most difficult government form because it requires the widest spread of intelligence. And we forgot to make ourselves intelligent when we made ourselves sovereign. Ignorance lends itself to manipulation by forces molding public opinion. They trace Athenian democracy's decay, quoting Plato's chilling analysis of how democracy can devolve into chaos, class warfare, and moral degeneration, ultimately leading to a dictatorship rising by promising order. They see similar patterns in the Roman Republic's fall. American democracy had a unique and fortunate start, with a heritage of law, abundant free land, and protective oceans. But many of those conditions are now gone. Economic freedom becomes increasingly exceptional, making political freedom a consoling pretense. The modern economy's complexity puts a premium on superior ability, naturally intensifying wealth and power concentration. Yet for all its flaws, they conclude that democracy has done less harm and more good than any other government form. It has broken down walls of privilege and, at its best, strives to make access to education and opportunity more nearly equal. But there's one constant looming over every government form, every economic system, every moral code, and that's war. War is one of history's constants. In the last 421 years of recorded history, only 268 have seen no war. It's the ultimate form of competition and natural selection. War's causes are the same as competition's causes among individuals: acquisitiveness, aggression, and pride. The state has our instincts, but without our restraints. An individual submits to laws because the state protects him, but the state itself acknowledges no higher authority. To illustrate this grim reality, the Durants create a powerful dialogue between a general and a philosopher. The general argues that war is the final arbiter. A long peace can fatally weaken a nation. A nation must be ready to defend its essential interests by any means necessary. The 10 Commandments must be silent when self-preservation is at stake. The philosopher answers with a plea for humanity. He begs us to challenge history's 1,000 evil precedents, to apply the golden rule to nations. He imagines a leader reaching out to an adversary saying, "We're willing to try a new approach. Let us defy history and extend courtesy and civilization to relations between states. If we lose this gamble, the results couldn't be worse than what we expect from continuing our traditional policies. If we succeed, we'll merit a place in mankind's grateful memory." The general just smiles. He says the philosopher has forgotten all history's lessons. Some conflicts are too fundamental for negotiation. World order will come not by agreement, but by a victory so decisive that one power can enforce international law, as Rome once did. Then he delivers a final, Chilling thought. States will only unite in cooperation when attacked by a common enemy from outside. Perhaps, he muses, we'll one day make contact with ambitious species on other planets. Then, and only then, will we of this Earth truly be one. So we're left with this grand cyclical panorama of civilizations rising and falling, morals and religions decaying and being reborn, wealth concentrating and dispersing, peace giving way to war. What causes civilization to grow and what causes it to decay? Growth comes from meeting a challenge. An external threat, difficult environment, or internal tension can stimulate people to creativity and strength. Decay, however, isn't some mystic fate. It's simply the failure of a civilization's leaders to meet the challenges of change. The challenges can be anything: soil exhaustion, shifting trade routes, oppressive taxes, the gap between rich and poor erupting into class war. As education spreads, old theologies lose their grip, and the moral code, stripped of supernatural authority, begins weakening. An unmoored generation gives itself over to luxury and corruption. At the process's end, a decisive defeat in war or invasion by a more vigorous people can deliver the final blow. Is this depressing? Not quite, say the Durants. Because civilizations don't truly die, Greek civilization isn't dead. Its frame is gone, but it survives in the race's memory, in every library and college. Homer, Plato, and Aristotle are more widely read now than in their own time. This selective survival of creative minds is the most real and beneficent of all immortalities. Nations die, but civilization migrates. Rome inherited from Greece, Western Europe inherited from Rome, America inherited from Europe. Civilizations are the generations of the racial soul. This brings us to the final, ultimate question: is progress real? If we look at human nature, it seems unchanged. If we look at science, it's neutral. It will kill for us as readily as heal. Our comforts and conveniences may have weakened our moral fiber. We have more speed, but more stress. More news, but less peace. Have we really outgrown intolerance, or just transferred it from religion to race or ideology? History is so rich, you can find evidence for any conclusion you want. But the Durants propose a specific definition. Progress is the increasing control of the environment by life. By this measure, progress is real, even if not continuous or universal. We've largely eliminated famine in the developed world. We've tripled our longevity. We've spread education and opportunity beyond any historical precedent. We shouldn't compare our average art or literature with the winnowed best of all the past. The real question is whether the average person has increased his ability to control his life's conditions. And compared to the disease, superstition, and violence of primitive life, the answer is yes. But the greatest measure of progress is the heritage we're born into. Civilization isn't inherited. It must be learned and earned by each generation anew. If transmission were interrupted for 1 century, we'd be savages again. Therefore, our finest achievement is our effort to transmit this heritage through education. The heritage we can now transmit is richer than ever before. It's richer than Pericles' because it includes all the Greek genius that followed him. Richer than Leonardo's because it includes the entire Renaissance. Richer than Voltaire's because it embraces the whole Enlightenment. Progress is real not because we're born better or wiser than our ancestors, but because we're born to a richer heritage, on a higher level of that pedestal which the accumulation of knowledge and art has raised over the centuries. History is the creation and recording of that heritage. Progress is its increasing preservation, transmission, and use. For those who study history, the Durants conclude, the past ceases to be a depressing chamber of horrors. It becomes a celestial city, a spacious country of the mind, where 1,000 saints, statesmen, scientists, poets, artists, and philosophers still live and speak, teach, and sing. The historian won't mourn because he can see no meaning in existence except what we ourselves put into it. Let it be our pride, that we can give our lives meaning. A fortunate person will, before he dies, gather up as much of his civilized heritage as he can and transmit it to his children. And to his final breath, he'll be grateful for this inexhaustible legacy, knowing that it is our nourishing mother and our lasting life. There are very few books that can fundamentally change how you see the world. The Lessons of History is one of them. Its power doesn't come from giving you new facts, but from giving you a new frame. In a world that feels increasingly chaotic, where every day brings a crisis that feels unprecedented, this book is like climbing to the top of a very high mountain. Suddenly, the tangled paths below form a coherent landscape. You see the patterns, the recurring cycles, the deep rhythms playing out for thousands of years. The most profound lesson for me, and I think for anyone living in our turbulent times, is the idea of the great systole and diastole of wealth, understanding that wealth concentration is a natural recurring phenomenon, not necessarily a product of malice, but of natural inequality in human abilities, and that it's always followed by redistribution, either peaceful or violent. This single idea reframes almost every political and economic debate we have today. It removes some of the anger and panic and replaces it with perspective. We're not the first society grappling with this. We're simply playing our part in a very old drama. The question for us is whether we'll be a Solon or a Rome. The book also serves as a powerful antidote to two opposing but equally unhelpful beliefs: the naive belief that humanity is always getting better and better, and the cynical belief that everything is getting worse and we're doomed. The Durants show us that both are wrong. Progress isn't a straight upward line but a jagged one, full of regressions and detours. And decay isn't the end, but a transition, a shedding of old skin so civilization can be reborn in new form. So how can we apply this monumental wisdom to our own lives? It can feel overwhelming, but I think it comes down to two simple practices. First, cultivate the habit of historical perspective. The next time you read a news headline about political polarization, class conflict, or moral decay, consciously pause and ask yourself, where have I seen this pattern before in history? Just asking the question shifts your mindset from anxiety to curiosity. It allows you to engage with the world with more wisdom and less fear. Second, recognize that you're an active participant in the story of progress. The Durants' most beautiful and hopeful conclusion is that progress is the transmission of our civilized heritage. You don't have to be a great inventor or world leader to be part of this. Take one element of our heritage that you love, a scientific idea, a piece of music, a work of art, a philosophical concept, or even just a simple moral lesson, and make a conscious effort to understand it deeply and share it with someone else, especially someone younger. When you do that, you're not just consuming culture, you're transmitting civilization. You're being a good ancestor. That was the book summary of The Lessons of History by Will and Ariel Durant. We've explored the grand themes today, but I'll be honest with you. A summary can only ever be a map. The real treasure is found when you walk the territory yourself. The true magic of this book happens in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular sentence or timeless story resonates with you in unexpected ways. This summary is designed to help you decide if this journey is one you want to take. If anything we've talked about today has sparked your curiosity, I urge you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see your world and your place within the grand, unfolding story of humanity. A link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you a new perspective, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to the Billionaire's Bookshelf. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another book that has the power to shape our lives. Let's keep learning and growing together.